Hi everyone, I'm Narendra Sanikommu. I'm currently working as a senior software engineer at NVIDIA, and I'm very excited about this talk. And the topic is OpenTelemetry or OpenTeleMessy, solving observability problems while creating new ones. Let's get started. And the agenda of this topic of the talk is I will start with the basic introduction about OpenTelemetry, and later we will dwell into the promise and the kind of issues the open. And later we'll go over the reality of OpenTelemetry and the problems, the new problems it creates. And we will also discuss about why does OpenTelemetry make sense and the strategies for taming some of the issues the OpenTelemetry opens up. And finally, the future outlook and the conclusion. So at first, the introduction. OpenTelemetry is a collection of APIs and SDKs that would help users to instrument, generate, and collect and export the telemetry data. It covers all basic signals like metrics, logs, and traces. If you look into the picture, at the left-hand side, the OpenTelemetry provides the different APIs, SDKs to instrument your application. At the middle, you have a OpenTelemetry collector. The OpenTelemetry collector is very powerful aggregator that could basically collect your metrics and send to a different observability backends. For example, metrics can be sent to some of the third-party vendors like Grafana Cloud. Later on, similarly, logs can be sent to Elasticsearch, Splunk. Traces could be sent to different other vendors. And the promise and the core problems on the OpenTelemetry solves. The first most important is the vendor lock elimination. Pre-OpenTelemetry world, every third-party vendor has a different proprietary agents for the SDKs and APIs. And OpenTelemetry solves this problem. So you can basically instrument once your application and you can send to whatever third-party vendor, whatever backend you want to send to. And the other problem it solved is unified standards. It standardized different open standards, like it combined open tracing and open sensors. And it also standardized telemetry collection across different languages. And the other problem it solved is complete signal coverage. As I mentioned before, it supports instrumenting and collecting metrics, traces, and logs. And also, it solves the problem of correlating these signals to analyze deeper. And the other problem it solved is suppression of concerns. It decoupled metric collection, telemetry collection from the analysis. As I mentioned, the OpenTelemetry is very powerful aggregator, and you can also choose any compatible backend you want to choose. And the other important problem it solved is auto instrumentation. Before OpenTelemetry, if you want to instrument your code to collect different signals, you need to write a lot of boilerplate and custom code. And OpenTelemetry, in many of the cases, it provides auto instrumentation capabilities. And instead of writing any code, you can just start exporting your telemetry. And it also had very good community adoption. It's one of the second largest active CNCF project, and it has very active roadmap. Given all the advantages and problems it solved, it also contributed to some new problems. So in reality, users and community adapters have been facing different problems. The first one is technology maze. If you look at the OpenTelemetry documentation, if you want to get started with, you will be overwhelmed with the different technologies like SDKs and APIs. So it has too many layers of indirection and abstractions. And also architecturally, it's quite complex. Each component has its own unique configurations and different lot of components, lot of exporters, processors, SDKs. It's not very easy to get started. And the other problem is the language implementation inconsistencies. So one of the problems the OpenTelemetry solved is if your dev environment is polyglot, it unifies how you collect, how you instrument your telemetry. But in reality, when you are implementing OpenTelemetry in your environment, there are tricks and tips each language has, and there are implementation inconsistencies. And the other problem is a maturity spectrum. Different components are at different maturity levels. For example, if you consider the broader signals, tracing is the most matured, and later comes the metrics and the logging. Logging is very recent trend, and it was only recently. And also getting started cited as a top barrier to adoption. And also, yeah, it's very difficult to debug when something goes wrong. Problems across instrumentation collection and export. And other is the collector configurations. So you'll be basically you will see a very big YAML configurations, mismatched component names, and sometimes you need to configure your own authentication, and you will see lots of connectivity issues. So if you want to get something resolved with the community, and if you are trying to file an issue, you will be bounced between different repos. So given the problems it solves and the kind of implementation challenges we have seen, when does OpenTelemetry make sense? So it makes sense when you have when your organization has a very large and diverse technology stacks, and you want to standardize across these environments. It helps when a value exceeds the implementation complexity. So you need to take a call and look at the trade-offs there. And also, if your organization is looking for a very strong vendor-neutral telemetry collection and exporters, then OpenTelemetry makes sense. It would be a very long-term investment, and you will have a lot of flexibility in the observability providers. It also makes sense, very makes sense in cloud data environments. It is very ideal for distributed systems and the monitoring containerized applications like Kubernetes. It also provides, it makes sense where you have data flexibility requirements, where you need to have good control over your data collection and you also need the filtering capabilities to reduce noise and costs, and you want to add custom tags for your automation searching. So how do you strategize and tame the telemessy issues? So you can start with auto instrumentation options. You can begin with language specific auto instrumentation. For example, in EKS is AWS managed Kubernetes service. So it has OpenTelemetry connectors that you can use by default. And also you can start with the more matured signals. Like as I mentioned before, tracing is the most matured OpenTelemetry signal. So you can start with that and later expand to metrics and logs. And also try to follow the latest best practices. Leverage semantic conventions and optimize the attributes and the labels you are using. And for faster troubleshooting, you can also use the local exporters. It also makes sense to do implementation instead of going for one big bang adoption. You can start small and you can focus on critical user flows at first and expand gradually as expertise grows. And also, we can depend on the community resources. Instead of only depending on official documentation, I can look into community resources like blogs and different talks. You can depend on those. And also, vendor distributions can simplify adoption. For example, recently, Grafana Cloud has come up with their own OpenTelemetry fork called Grafana Ally. So it makes implementation adoption a little easier. And also, there are lots of active community support and extensions. So you can make use of those to come out to overcome some of the challenges and some of the telemessy the OpenTelemetry creates. Our future outlook and beyond, there are lots of promising developments. One is semantic conventions is reaching stability. This is very promising development. And the OpenTelemetry connector is also approaching version 1. This is a very powerful aggregator. And besides tracing logs and metrics, profiling has been becoming very popular. OpenTelemetry is also adapting that signal and it's planned to support it. And GenAI observability is also integration within OpenTelemetry ecosystem. It's also promising. The ongoing challenges, there are still many challenges like documentation problems, complexity management, and standardizing different edge cases. Given all this, OpenTelemetry is still the number one solution for your observability if you are looking for a strong, vendor neutral, all comprehensive solution. Thank you. Thank you all for your attention.